Hey everyone, in this week's video I'm going to be showing you a quick hack to make using and storing cabled tools in your workshop a whole lot easier. First things first though, this video has to come with a massive disclaimer. What I'm about to show you is something I've done, it's not something I recommend you do, this is not a how-to. This will void your warranty on whatever tool you do it with, and if you don't understand the electrics you're dealing with, you could risk injuring yourself or killing yourself. So I am not suggesting you do this, I'm saying this is something I've done and I'm showing you the process. So with the disclaimer out of the way, let's start by going through what you'll need. The first thing I needed for this project was some Neutrik Trucon connectors. These are the ones I've chosen to go with. They're a 20 amp version, which is high enough rated for any of my tools. There'll be a link down in the notes below for finding these if you need them. After that, basic tools for this project, set of wire strippers, a knife, and then a small screwdriver. You will notice later in the video that the screwdriver here is the wrong one, and I had to change that. So the first step for me was to select the tool I was going to modify. This angle grinder I don't use very often, it's not worth me buying a battery powered one, but I use it enough that the cable's beginning to annoy me. So this was my first victim. Step 2 was to measure roughly 100mm down the cable from the boot. I then took a serious pause to just consider the fact that I was definitely about to do this, was okay with voiding the warranty, and couldn't see any other issues why I shouldn't do it, and then cut the cable off at that length. Step 3 of the process was to strip the end of the cable attached to the tool. I find actually it's easiest to use a knife for the outer insulation, and then I tend to use just a pair of wire strippers to do the smaller insulation. This may say more about how sharp my wire strippers are or not, but this is the easiest approach that I find. It's worth noting that this tool is double insulated. If it wasn't, there would be a third wire in here in earth. There is the availability for an earth on the connectors that I'm using. The next step in the process is to add the connector to the tool. The connector we're using here is the NAC3MX-W. There is one that has an F rather than the M, that's the end that you'll need for the trailing cable, but we'll get there in a moment. So let's open the pack up and have a quick look at what comes with this. It comes in a total of 4 parts, although you will only see 3 currently. We have the small cable grip. The connector itself opens into 2 sections. And then we have the termination block that we actually attach the wiring to. One of the biggest mistakes you can make with these, and I've made it so many times, is forgetting to put the boot section of the connector on before you add the termination block. So I need to make sure that that boot goes on as the very first thing. The termination block, as you can see, has 3 connectors on it. As I mentioned earlier, if this tool had an earth, we could use that as well. This is as simple as connecting the wires to the right sections. And we're going to use a screwdriver here, not the screwdriver you saw earlier, because I realised that these connectors are a small star drive. One of the nice things about using these connectors over some of the other options that are available is they don't require you to do any soldering, they are just a screw fit connector, which is incredibly useful. Step 5, the cheeky request. If you're enjoying this video, please consider hitting the like button down below, and if you'd like to see more content like this from me, hit the subscribe button and then you'll be notified whenever a new video goes live. And with that out the way, we are on to step 6, which is reassembling the connector. So we've already got the boot on the cable and the wires terminated into the block. We can then add this white cable grip. It's a bit difficult to get around the cable. I could have put this on before, but it does go round. It's got a slot so that you can add it over the cable. There is only one way round this goes with the connector, so you need to just line up all the dents and bumps in the connector, but once you find that spot, it will slot in nicely. It's then simply a question of pulling the back of the connector forwards and screwing it together with the front section of the connector. Again, this needs to line up, but there's only one way around it can go, which keeps things nice and easy. I'm then going to pull the back section of the boot forward, screw it on, you hear it clicking as it goes round. Make sure that it's tightened up. It does actually give you a torque spec that these should be tightened to on the packaging. Now, I've sped this final section up because you don't need to sit and watch me wiring another plug in real time, but what I'm doing here is using the cable that I cut off this tool to make a feeder cable. So using the F version of the connector, I am terminating this in exactly the same way as I did before, remembering to put the boot on first. One thing to bear in mind with this is I didn't actually make up a feeder cable for every single tool. Part of the benefit of this, and you'll see just after this, I'll show you some of the ways in which I use this, is you don't need a feeder cable for every individual tool. You can have one cable to each bench, and then all you need to do is click the connectors together, as you can see here, and that tool is now plugged in. One of the good things is the connectors lock together and you have to use the little triggers to release them, so the chances of it pulling off whilst you're busy working is very minimal. As you can see here, I've converted a load of my tools to this. I have one cable that runs to this bench and I can swap it between the tools as and when I need to. It means I'm not having to have endless extension cords or fiddle around trying to get to plugs behind my workbench. It doesn't matter what the tool is, even down to a little glue gun, this works absolutely fine. The other thing I've done is I've attached one of the feeder cables to my dust extraction hose. This means that when I'm using any of my tools with dust collection built into them, I'm only having to pull around one loom rather than a cable and a separate dust hose. One of the biggest benefits for me with this is when it comes to storing the tools. As you can see, I keep my tools on high shelves in my workshop. Now that I've removed all of the cables, these just sit neatly and I can lift them down individually without knocking off the tool next to it because the cables have ended up tangled.